I'm Farhan Shaikh, grade 12. Joining me today is Aditya Prajapati, grade 10, a student with a keen analytical mind and a growing interest in how technology shapes our lives. Welcome, Aditya.
Thank you, Farhan. Glad to be here.
Today we are examining a hypothetical scenario, a world without the internet. Not a temporary outrage, but a permanent absence. Aditya, what is your initial assessment of such a world?
Um, so, so it would be fundamentally different. The internet has only existed for about 3 decades, yet it has reconstructed nearly every aspect of modern life: communication, commerce, education, governance, and so much more. Removing it would simply return us to the 1980s. It would create a crisis of adaptation.
A precise observation. Today, we will analyze this scenario through three lenses: knowledge acquisition, social structures, and economic systems. Let us begin with knowledge. Aditya, how do you currently access information?
Search engines, primarily Google. I type a query and receive results in milliseconds. It is efficient, but it has changed how we process information.
In what way, if I may ask?
Um, we have shifted from deep reading to scanning. Before the internet, if you wanted information, you could have consulted a book, which required time and focus and sequential reading. But now we have skim headlines, read snippets, and move on. We know more facts but understand less.
Exactly. Consider the pre internet era. If you needed to research a topic, you visited a library, consulted the Dewey Decimal System, and located physical books. Encyclopedias were the closest equivalent to search engines, but they were limited, expensive, and quickly outdated.
And that limitations had consequences. Information was controlled by institutions, universities, publishers, and governments. The internet democratized access, but it also democratized misinformation. Anyone can publish anything.
Which brings us to the critical question: without the internet, who would control knowledge?
Let me think. Yeah, the same institutions as before, but with less competitions, obviously. Libraries, academic journals, newspapers, and government archives. The barrier to entry would be higher. You would need credentials, affiliation, or physical access.
And what about verification?
Uh, Without the internet, wait, sorry, slower but more rigorous. Fact checking required cross referencing multiple physical sources. Like you could say, for example, today we fact check in seconds, but we also spread falsehood in seconds. The trade off is speed versus reliability.
And what about education specifically?
Well, in education, without the internet, education would remain localized. For example, let's take a student in Mumbai would have access to different resources than a student in New York. Today, both can access the same MIT lecture. The internet has standardized access, but it has also homogenized perspectives. Local knowledge systems, indigenous practices, regional histories are being displaced.
Okay. So the internet globalizes knowledge but erodes local knowledge. Is that what you're trying to say?
Precisely, the quantity increases, but diversity decreases.
All right. So now let us move to social structures. Aditya, how has the internet changed human relationships?
It has decoupled connections for proximity. Before the internet, your social network was geographically determined. Neighbors, classmates, colleagues, and so many more people. But now you can maintain relationships across continents.
It sounds good, but what are the consequences of this?
Local communities bonds weaken. If you can find companionship online, you have less incentive to engage with your physical neighbors. This creates what sociologists call atomization, which means individuals existing in parallel but not interacting.
There is also the question of social movements. Without the internet, how would protest movements organize?
Through physical infrastructure, like meeting halls, printed pamphlets, word of mouth, and so much more. It would be slower and vulnerable to surveillance, but it would also require genuine commitment. You cannot join a movement with a click. You must show up physically.
Mhm. Okay. So the internet lowers the barrier to participation, but also lowers the cost of participation.
Exactly. Slackativism. People feel they have contributed by sharing a post, but no real change occurs. Without the internet, participation would be lowered but more meaningful.
Mm. What about social mobility? The internet has allowed people to acquire skills, find jobs, and build networks regardless of location.
True, but it has also created new hierarchies. Digital divides, those without access are left behind. In a world without internet, mobility would depend on physical infrastructure, schools, roads, libraries. It would all favor urban over rural populations.
Okay. So the internet is not inherently equalizing, it is creating new inequalities while potentially reducing old ones. Is that what you're trying to say?
Correct. It redistributes opportunities but does not eliminate inequalities.
Okay. Now we examine economics. Aditya, what industries would cease to exist without the internet?
E-commerce, digital advertising, streaming services, social media platforms, cloud computing, rideshare apps, almost the entire digital economy. Billions of dollars in market value would simply vanish.
And what would replace them?
Physical retail, print advertising, broadcast media, traditional banking, the pre-internet economic model would reassert itself, but the transition would be a catastrophe. The global economy has structured itself around digital infrastructure. Removing it would cause a depression,
What about employment?
massive displacement. Software engineers, digital marketers, data analysts, entire professions would become obsolete. New jobs would emerge in logistics, manufacturing, and services, but the tradition will be brutal.
And productivity?
It would also decline significantly. Uh, the internet has enabled automation, remote work, and global supply chains. Without it, productivity would revert to pre-1990 levels.
Okay. However, there would be benefits, right?
Possibly, reduced consumption of digital goods would mean less e-waste. Less screen time could also improve public health and without targeted advertisement, consumer behavior would be less manipulated.
So a trade-off between efficiency and well-being, right?
Precisely. The internet optimizes productivity, but at the cost of privacy, attention, and mental health.
Okay. Aditya, we have examined knowledge, social structures, and economic systems. Let me ask you a final question. If you had to access the internet, net positive or net negative, what would you conclude?
Net positive, but significant caveats. The internet has increased access to information, enabled global collaboration, and created economic opportunities. However, it has also eroded privacy, reduced attention spans, and created new forms of inequality.
Okay. So the internet is a tool, not a solution.
Exactly. It is a tool with enormous potential for both construction and destruction. The issue is not the tool, but how we use it.
Okay. What would you recommend then?
Deliberate use, boundaries, awareness, and so much more. We would need to treat the internet as a resource, not as an environment. So step away periodically, read books, have physical conversations. Remember that the digital world is not the real world. A balanced assessment.
All right. I'm Farhan Shaikh, grade 12.
And I'm Aditya Prajapati, grade 10.
Thank you for listening for the Time Travelers podcast. Thank you.